Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You are listening to episode number 207. I'm Victoria Gallagher, and I'm the Law of Attraction hypnotist, the #1 best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction, Align Yourself with the Manifesting Conditions and Successfully Attract Your Desires. And I'm also the founder of HipTalk.com and HypnoCloud apps, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. So be sure to download that app from the app stores. And today I am so excited because I have a very special guest with me, Mandy Morris. Mandy Morris is an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and a manifestation expert. She is the creator of Authentic Living, an online company which is designed to help people reconnect with their authentic selves to find their purpose, peace, and deep healing. Mandy and her brands have been featured in media outlets that include Shape, Mind Body Green, The Chalkboard, BuzzFeed, Well and Good, and Thrive Global, as well as on notable podcasts, including The Jenny McCarthy Show, Your Own Magic, and Hungry for Happiness. And she can be found on her website, mandymorris.love, which is such a beautiful extension there. And her books, one of her books is Love, It's How I Manifest. And her recent book that just recently came out is The 8 Secrets to Powerful Manifesting. And today, Mandy is going to be sharing with us some of her insights on how we can use manifestation to heal trauma. So welcome to the show, Mandy.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Thank you. I am so excited too. And you know what? Before we get started, and you don't even know about this, but so this is really interesting. So I've been following you actually on social media for a long, long time. And then there was kind of a little break where I didn't see you around. And then I started on TikTok and I started like watching your TikTok videos. And it was just really interesting because, I just happened to see you one day on TikTok. And then like literally the very next day after I was watching that TikTok video, and I was just kind of thinking about you, and I was thinking like, what is she up to these days? And I noticed that you had this new book out and all of that. And I just started to get very curious about what you were up to. And literally the very next day is when your publicist reached out to me to have you on the show. And I'm like, okay, that is some manifestation.
I'm in the energy field.
We're both in the energy field. And that actually happened with another guest that I'm going to be having on the show in a couple of weeks as well. So it was just kind of like, I'm in the zone, you're in the zone. We're all in the zone here of this thing called manifestation. And it's funny. I don't know if you experience this, but the last little thing I'm going to say about it is it does seem like sometimes the lighter and the more subtle we are rather than, when I think one of the reasons why people have such a hard time with manifesting is they're just too intense, and that intense energy kind of pushes it away. But when you have those little coincidences or synchronicities, it's because you're in that like subtle energy state.
Yeah. And then it's not so heavy because sometimes we're trying to control. We're like, let me manifest everything right now. And we want to create things that we feel like we're in dire need of. But I agree, when you're like, oh, these little magical pieces, then you're just building upon that vibration and that reality versus everything has to happen right now.
Exactly. It's like if you need it, you're just going to push it away. But it's like if you get into that playful, it's like, it's okay. Either way, it just seems to happen much, much, much easier. So how do I've been following you for a long time. So, this was, this was just another little piece of that I put this on my desk for a reason. So so yeah, I had been taking the One Funnel Away challenge about 3 years ago with Russell Brunson. You're familiar with like the click funnels, and he has you do this mission to the Dream 100. And so I happened to, after this little experience, I looked back on my list and check this out. Let's see. There you are.
Oh my gosh, number 58. I like it.
So I could cross that one off. Yeah, so that was all part of the
I love it.
yeah. So anyway, getting back to, what is this what is this thing called manifestation?
Right. So it's funny because manifestation's gotten such a funny rap, I think, over the years, where it's this, at least this is the conversation I'm trying to change, is that it's going to just fall on your lap, and it's magical and mystical, and there's no real explanation to it, and it's just about this magical vibration that you're on. And it's not for me. It's rooted in science and psychology, and absolutely that incredible spirituality, because that's the fun part. That's where all the magic gets to happen. But sometimes we're out of alignment in areas that are a little bit more humanistic. And so for me, manifestation is a constant process. It is always happening, and it's a communication system with our environment, with ourselves, with everything that is around and within us. And as I teach counter manifesting, the pieces that we don't realize that we're manifesting, it's not just our mantras and affirmations in the morning for an hour. It is a consistent communication.
I love the way you explain it. And I love that, you come from a science background with it, and you've really analyzed it and dived in. And, so many people, I think you're right. What gives it such a bad rap is people think that it's just magic.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're sitting there going, why can't I make it work? Well, because there's no steps to it. There's no, like, what does magic mean to each person anyways, and what are the rules around it? And that's all of the psychological work we actually have to do, is breaking through so we can be in that more magical space consistently. But like I said, there's work to be done first.
Exactly, exactly. So you have coined this term, which is really interesting. A lot of people are really familiar with their vision boards, which, that is kind of the magic in a way. I think that there's a reason why you create a vision board. I'd love to hear your take on that. But you have coined the term manifested board. And so how is that different from a vision board?
Well, I've noticed, like, when I used to do vision boards, I would do vision boards when I couldn't create anything in my life. So I was like, why isn't it working? I hear people use it. Why do they get what they're, putting on there? And I'd realized that it was, again, me doing, all that work. And so I noticed vision boards are great once you reach a certain state, like a certain vibratory level or mental state, if you will. But how do we get into that state where we can further create? And so I was like, well, I still want to create something. I want something to look at every day. But instead of me having the energy of desire or out of reachness, or I don't have it yet, what have I already created? And so I was like, I want to do manifested boards, and it will be everything that I've done that I am proud of, that fulfills me, that in some way relates to what I am wanting to further create. And so I've got them over my house, where I've got like pictures of my clients or my philanthropic work, or my retreat center now, or amazing places that I've been, just, all of my children, the things that I've already manifested. Because when I sit there in front of it, I'm like, I'm already a creator. I can get right back into that. Look at all I've already done versus, oh, I don't have it right now.
That is beautiful. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know that that's what it was. And when you said that, it reminded me of, I kind of made a manifested video, just because, I'm a member of this Hypno Thoughts organization. We do this once a year seminar, and so every year the organizer always gives us a little project to work on, and we had to create a video of where we were 10 years ago, what we've been doing over the last 10 years, and then what we plan to do over the next 10 years. And it was, I was kind of a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I really want to do this, but I was so glad that I did, because it was like, wow, look at where I've been. I mean, I didn't have podcasts 10 years ago. I didn't have the app. I didn't have any of these books. I, you know, created, I've created this 5K. I mean, I've done a lot, and so when you can look at, I mean, that was really empowering. And so I totally am an advocate now for this manifested board. I should take all that and put it on a manifested board.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, what it did, like with that video you just said, it got you into what I call the state of embodiment, to where you're on the frequency in which you seek instead of you're on the process of trying to get there. It's like, boom. And talk about making faster manifestations when you're in that space of it's already here and available where I'm at. You know what I mean? So I love the video piece too, because you can catch so much essence on video.
Yeah, you really can. So that is really cool. Well, another term that that you use a lot that I've become familiar with is the counter manifesting. So I'd love to hear, what is counter manifesting?
It was something I was very good at for a long time.
Think I have a good idea what it might be.
Yeah, I think we all have done it. But so basically, manifestation is, or what we used to think would be, the conscious process of trying to create what we want, or asking for what we want. And so I would imagine, for the sake of simplicity, like a fork in the road. And our conscious desires, what we know we want to manifest, the love, the happiness, the money, the fulfillment, the purpose work, whatever it is, world peace. We're saying that in moments. But there is, let's say that's an hour a day. On the other fork of the road is 23 other hours of the day where we have something called the subconscious reel. And the subconscious reel is all of that extra programming, the traumas, the way that we're really neurologically wired, and it's going in an opposite direction. And so that's where we're countering everything that we consciously desire. So I could say, of course, I want my soulmate, but I might have something in my subconscious reel where I'm counter manifesting, saying, but love isn't really safe, or love doesn't last, or remember what happened with mom and dad, or something like that. So that counter manifestation is oppositional energy of what we desire consistently being sent out into the universe.
Yes, because ultimately it is our subconscious mind's job to protect us and to keep us safe. And so how do you, do you have a process or a technique that you use to help people to overcome those counter manifestations?
Yes. And I wish I could be like, here's the one thing that changes everything, right? But it would be fine. It is a little bit of a process. I break it down in fullness in the book, but one piece, and really kind of the whole structure of at least going into the mind, because we talk about the mind, we have to shift the emotions and the heart, all pieces. But let's say we're talking about kind of the mind and how the emotions are attached to it, because emotions are a total precursor to manifestation. They either help us or hurt us, but they are powerful tools to use when we're creating. And so I always imagine it with the TPP. So it's triggers, personas, and pattern interrupts. And triggers are everything that throws our emotional frequency off or shifts our emotional state in a way that doesn't serve us. Usually those triggers are because of the subconscious, like you said, trying to protect us, or we're not seeing things clearly. You have a funky, lens on us. We can't see what's really happening. We're seeing it through the eyes of the trauma or whatever. And then it causes us to step into a persona, and a persona is an unhealed part of us. And then we see the world even, more so in a kind of an unclear manner, or in some way that we think is serving us, but it's not. There's a perception of all of that. But what we want to do, and this is probably the operative piece, is we have to shift that energy. So we do the pattern interrupt. And that is something that, of course, it has to work. So we have to play around with different, techniques, whether it's physical, like 10 jump squats, or we do a visual like Oprah snapping her fingers saying, get out of it, we got to do something else, or whatever it is. But what you're trying to do on so many levels is interrupt the neurological pathway from firing the way it normally does, which is not serving us. And in essence, what happens is we're shifting the thought or belief. Therefore, we're changing the energy. We're changing that whole conversation. So I think the magic, if I had to say one thing in this moment, is in the interrupt. When you stop doing what you've been doing that's causing the counter manifestation, and you redirect that energy, magic happens.
I love it. It's kind of like the old, when you crave a cigarette, snap the rubber band on your on your wrist.
Yes, as long as it works,
Exactly. I do a cute little process in my seminar, pattern interrupt, where, I just like where somebody will start to notice the dialogue that they're having. And then it's just literally just a, jump up, clap your hands. And it's like, what am I manifesting right now? And then move into the new thing that they've already pre-assembled and decided that this is the new idea that they're going to step into. So I love pattern interrupts.
Yeah, because you're bringing it into full awareness, like especially with what you're telling people to do. You're like, let me actually know what I'm telling myself, which is such magic. Because most of the time, our boss can come in and yell at us. We get all freaked out, but we don't really know why. We just shove it under the rug and try to push on with the day. But now that energy is simmering and turning into something else, and we're going to go home and yell at our spouse or whatever it is. But what you're saying, which I love, is hold on a second. I'm not in the right space. And why? what an incredible inquisitive thing to actually figure out, what are we telling ourselves in that moment and how is it not true?
Exactly. Because we are always manifesting. It's not like it's not even like manifesting is hard because we're just
whether we like it or not.
we're doing it. We're doing it whether, but it's like, what are we manifesting that, we really want to figure out in that moment. And so I love it. I want to kind of pause here on some of the Q&A because one of the things that, I really love about you and that I have, just, that it was one of my first exposures to you was your story and like how you got into manifesting and how you like kind of figured this out and put all the pieces together. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about like where you came from and what kind of happened to, to give you all of this wonderful, amazing insight?
Thank you. So it's pretty intense to unpack in some ways, but I'll give
Speaking
you
of a pattern interrupt, right?
right. Let's do it. Yeah. So it came from, divorce. My father was an addict and he was going through so much pain. And I think a huge piece of that ended up being my purpose, was seeing that they can't change the way that they believe. They're, these structures in which they've built in their minds doesn't serve them. And I had my own traumas as a child. And when I was 13, one of the most defining ones was when my father called me as he was attempting suicide. And that, thankfully, he did not pass. We figured out where he was. We got his stomach pumped. But a part of his addiction was consistently and sometimes intentionally overdosing. And I remember when he called me and he was calling to say goodbye. And I sat there and just thought, oh my gosh, this person who I love so much, I can't even help them. And prior to that, I was a child who was in all the gifted programs. Universities wanted to study me. On my father's side, highly intelligent, incredible lineage, a whole bunch of addiction and dysfunction because of all that, that hyperactivity in their mind. They didn't know what to do with it. They had trauma. My father was abused as well. And so it just, it continued as such. But that was probably when I shut my light off in the most fullness, I suppose. And I went into my adolescence selling drugs, doing them, hanging out with the wrong crowds. Most of my friends that I had then are now dead or in jail, or a few of them have turned their lives around, but they're always like, how'd you do it, Mandy? Like, how'd you get out? And I'm like, on the breath of an angel, truly so in so many ways. But that led me to, living a life of dysfunction. I was so used to dysfunction. My stepfather, who primarily raised me, I love him very much. My ex-stepfather, I guess I should say, he was severely mentally ill and we didn't know it. And so he was also had various addictions and was struggling with his own demons. And us kids were, getting the brunt of it, not knowing, what was really going on or that he needed help and everything. And so I took all of that trauma, that dysfunction, and turned it into a sense of normalcy for me. It was what I could count on. And it was something I was really used to. And so that led to me choosing really dysfunctional friendships and relationships. If they were healthy, I would turn and run away. I was like, nope, I can't do that. Sabotage it, get rid of it before it gets rid of you. And my defining moment, throughout that, there was still moments where I found myself with NASA scientists and studying with these incredible world leaders that, I sat there in my early 20s going, how did I get in this room? So I still had that intelligence and that love for the world that would come out in moments, but my pain was so strong and my own dysfunction had just become so normal that those were like little blurps on the radar. But it wasn't until I was in my most abusive relationship, I would say, and he threw glass at me and it became, a physical relationship in that sense. And I sat there and I just had this incredible moment of clarity and this energy that washed over me. And I was like, this isn't how my story ends. This is not it. I am okay with surrendering to everything. I don't need money. I don't need children. I don't need a relationship. But I called to my higher power. It was very theatrical, but it really did happen this way. I was on my knees crying and I was like, please use me. I am here of service, but I'm here for something else other than this. Just show me the way. Please bring me peace. That's all I ask for. And I surrendered. And I think that the purity, talk about manifestation energy, like the purity and that energy that was sent out for me that day, it turned my entire life around. And that relationship, my job, everything, no longer was supposed to exist. Everything was pulled out that didn't belong, and everything that was needed to be there was brought in. And I can tell you literally, I think it was like in a 2-week time frame, my purpose work began to emerge. I met my now husband, and my life just turned completely around in the most beautiful of ways. And it was the first time where I felt like I'm actually getting it right. Because it wasn't that I hadn't tried, like we all try to turn our lives around. But there's a moment where all of a sudden you finally feel empowered and you know you're never going back.
Yeah.
And that was that moment for me. And that was when everything that I have today began to emerge, and my service to the world, and, you know, all the beautiful stuff.
You know, that's such a beautiful story. And, you know, that there's such a theme lately with this whole, I mean, I just keep coming across more and more of this surrender. And I mean, even I, you know, 22 years ago or whatever, when I got into this business and I was really struggling to figure it out. And I had to get on your hands and knees, you know, like, why? Why me? Why is this happening? You know, I'm meant for more and blah, blah, blah. You know, I had the exact same thing. And I was literally, I was reading a story about Oprah and how before she, you know, when she was asking about why, you know, she meant to get this part, and then she just surrendered it all. And so there really does seem to be, maybe that is where some of the magic, if we were looking for the magic, you know, and I also refer to it as like detaching in a way, but it's like, you know, just surrendering and trusting and having faith that, you know, you're going to be guided, and you were.
Yeah, goosebumps as you talk. That detachment, like I call it surrender, but I think sometimes detaching from the outcome feels a little better for people. But it is. It's not like Jesus, take the wheel. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to do anything anymore. It is, let me stop thinking that I have the answers if I'm coming from my past, if I'm coming from what already hasn't worked. Albert Einstein said we can't solve the problem from the same mindset that got us there in the first place. And when you surrender, I feel like you let in such divine energy, and then it can speak to you in breadcrumbs. Because I know that there was no way in heck that moment when I was on my knees that I thought I would have the reality I have today. I couldn't conceptualize it. There'd be no way for me to be able to even know that this was available to me, let alone where I'm going. But when you surrender, you allow for that authenticity, is what I call it, like that incredible divine guidance, information, the detachment from the outcome, so that you can go in the flow with the universe. You can expand with the universe and experience all that you actually are, instead of fighting against it, because it's painful to be something other than what we are. It's painful to not expand. And that's what the world's taught us to do, is to stay small. But when we surrender, we detach from the desired outcome. It's like the chicken or the egg, which one comes first? We're always taken care of.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. That is such a beautiful story, and it really illustrates the point that I think people, I think it is more about surrender than willing, trying to will things to
Totally.
happen.
Totally.
And it doesn't discount that, you know, I mean, we want this great life, you know, we want money, we want health, we want soulmates and all of those things. You know, it's okay to want those things, but sometimes, you know, we can get in our own way in you know, in having those things.
Yeah, we've got like our human desires, which are beautiful, as you said, and we can have them. But I feel like there is a perception of how the human mind wants it to look, which is the
Mhm.
not enoughness, and it must be this way. But then there's the version of us that actually fulfills the emotional need that we thought the physical thing would. And it usually shows up differently. So we're like, I don't really want a billion gajillion dollars. I want to feel free. Wow, what a completely different vibration in which we can experience in a completely different way if we allow for ourselves to surrender to it and experience it in the now.
Exactly. Well, that money thing, the money piece is just, it's telling the universe how to manifest it. And, you know, that's the only way that we can conceive, like, well, I need money in order for this to happen. It's like, well, no, not necessarily. It's not,
Right.
it
Right.
can
Bring the
come
emotion
so many,
first. Create
exactly.
after, of course.
What are some other most common myths or misunderstandings that people have about manifestation?
Well, outside of that whole woo-woo piece that we talked about, if now, let's say that someone's jumping in and they're like, okay, now I got to do the work. I think that there's a perception that going into your mind, or what I call self-mastery, because honestly, if you want to learn how to manifest, just master yourself. That's all you need to do. You don't need to master your environment. None of that. You just master yourself. Self-mastery is everything. So then we have to jump into it. And I think I hear like this a lot, or I felt this for myself, was that in order for me to grow, I have to go back into the traumas that are stopping me, which would stop me from going into the traumas and helping myself, because sometimes we've got some heavy stuff. And so one of the greatest beliefs I created, primarily when I was working clinically, I forgot this in my story, there's so many pieces. When I was doing clinical work on psychosomatic illnesses, getting to the root, this was actually one of the reasons that I started understanding manifestation the way I did, because I never thought I'd be teaching manifestation. I was like, science, psychology, I want everyone to know that I know exactly the steps. It was so egotistical. And then the universe is like, you're going to be a life coach. I was like, awesome. Okay, that's cool. Didn't see that happening. And I'm going to teach manifestation. But a lot of it, I call it manifestation, but it's trauma work, right? It's rewiring minds. And so one of my biggest beliefs is we do not have to revisit the trauma. We do not have to go back into all of the painful experiences. Those are branches of a root problem. We can go straight to the root and pull that sucker out, and we can just work on the beliefs the trauma created. We don't have to revisit that in and of itself, because sometimes that's too debilitating, you know?
I love that. I love that. As a hypnotherapist, sometimes, there are people that have the schools of thought that you have to go back and revisit it and, live through it again. And, I'm not so sure about that personally. I just kind of feel like, I don't really work with a lot of, trauma people. I kind of work with like the fun stuff, the people that want to manifest the fun stuff. And, we just remove blocks and change limiting beliefs and things like that. But, there are a lot of hypnotists out there, that believe like you got to get down to the root of the problem. You got to have a cathartic abreaction and, all this stuff. And I agree with you. I don't think all of that's really necessary. If you can change the core limiting beliefs, then that's the work. And it is, I mean, would you agree? I mean, it is, there's work to, there's work that you have to do.
Yeah, I think that certainly when manifestation, when I first learned about it, I was like, it felt amazing. I agree with the frequency in which it was presented to me, the secret and all that. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'd never heard anything like it before. But then I was like, how do I do it? It's gone. The feeling's gone. So that vibration is totally there. But I think the piece that I didn't know was how incredible my manifestations would become, how consistent they would become in doing the work. And maybe doing the work is the worst way to say it, because people don't want to do the work, but the work can be fun. And it's exciting learning about yourself. And it's exciting seeing you move matter in the 3D and master yourself. That's fun, actually. And if you're going to live life anyways, you might as well do it in a way that's less painful, which is empowering yourself to know yourself so that you can manifest what you want.
I love what you're saying, that doing the work can be fun, because like literally just a couple of days ago, I got a kind of negative review on my book, because, see, I kind of come from a personal development background. That was my first, before I realize that it's the same thing as manifesting and law of attraction. It's doing the work, it's doing the personal development work. And so I have all these worksheets, right, that I have people, go through exercises and things like that. And that was part of the review, is like, she makes us download these worksheets and it's not fun.
Oh my
like some people think it's fun.
Remember what Oprah said, don't read the comments.
I know. You know what? You're absolutely right. I need to just get somebody else to do that.
Yeah, that was one of the smartest things I did, was until I certainly grew thick skin, but I also grew a love for the world and understanding where someone's coming from. So I appreciate the feedback now. But there was a time where I was like, I can't read the comments. We got to find a team member who can do it, and they'll handle it. And it was one of the smartest things I did.
I love it. I love it. I need to grow into that level of maturity and just let go of needing to know what other people are saying, because you're right. Not everyone's going to 100% agree with you. And, and I don't know why we have a tendency sometimes, or if you've ever experienced it, but to like that negative thing is like so much bigger.
Could be 100 good reviews, but one, it could be 5 stars, but one 3-star. You're like, what went wrong? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
it's crazy.
That's a trauma response, right? Like I know for myself, I was like that. I was like, this one person's upset. And then my husband would be like, because he's so wonderfully wired, completely opposite than me. He'd be like, Mandy, everybody's happy. You can't make everyone happy. That's a trauma response. That's people pleasing. And I'd be like, right. Of course I'm not for everybody.
Ooh,
That's okay.
yes, I love that. I'm okay. I'm not for everyone.
Yeah.
So how can we embrace more positive, intentional energy in everything that we do? I feel like that's a great segue into that.
It's so good. And as weird as it sounds, I would say don't be positive. Don't be realistic. That's not the word I'm saying, but be neutral. So sometimes one of the things that I teach is like, how do we climb up the emotional chart, right? So let's say that I am sitting in like anger or hopelessness or sadness. That's a dense vibration. It's not a great place to manifest from, but I also need to get out of it. If someone were to tell me, just be positive. Oh, just go do something that makes you happy. I'd be like, what really? Like that's hard for me in this space because you have a certain set of lenses, you're in a certain persona, that's hard to do. And so I always say, if you're in a low vibration, go to neutrality. Go to a state of curiosity. If you can be curious instead of angry that you're sad or sad that you're angry, or, just floating around in that density, if you can say, let me go above for a moment, bird's eye view this and say, why am I angry? Why am I people pleasing? Why am I why is this resonate? Like, why is this trigger resonating with me? Because there's a reason, right? Doesn't for everybody. So this is something that I need to work on. But once you're in that state of curiosity and neutrality, I call that pure potential. Then you can go, what am I grateful for? What do I want to go do today that's going to fill up my cup? I'm feeling really empowered because I just got out of anger and I'm not toxic positivity, pretending everything is okay. Wow, that feels so good, right? So it's this natural process. But I would say the first thing is just try to get to neutrality and you can really go anywhere from there.
Exactly. I love that because it's much easier to go from where you are to, and if you're sad or frustrated, just disappointed, to just kind of an observer, a neutral observer. But I mean, ultimately, yeah, I mean, gratitude just really, it just ultimately pulls you up to a higher level.
100%.
And how can you like, how can you like, be grateful? You can't be grateful and angry at the same time.
Yeah, they literally can't exist vibrationally at the same time. I heard that. So I would say this is something that's worked for me because I was wired very negatively. Like I was always control, looking behind my back, what's going to, always one shoe was going to fall. That was how I was wired because of my past. And so I noticed that if I was at that space of being low and trying to get back up to positivity, that was harder for me. So I realized I had to be super proactive. And this works for anyone, is how do you build into your day proactively instead of reactively ways that will fill up your cup? And so the first thing I do, my feet don't even hit the floor until I have said thank you 3 times. So I'm pouring out, and I feel it truly because I'm looking at like my son who's snoring next to me, or I'm looking at the mountains outside of the window or whatever it is. And I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And now I'm ready to move on with my day. And I'm journaling and, whatever it is. So I would say self-care in essence. Be proactive about what fills your cup up, be proactive about self-care, and you'll naturally find yourself in gratitude instead of trying to get there, kind of like the manifested board, the vision board. Let's just already be there. So let's be proactive about staying there.
These are some amazing tools. Yeah, that you're unmanifested, or not unmanifested. You're manifested.
Yeah.
We don't want to unmanifest. Your manifested board, your gratitudes and your pattern interrupts. I mean, these are all like really, really amazing tools. And I really love the way that you've set the record straight. Just the last question is, is there anything else that you recommend, there's so many people that experience, their trauma, and and, and are still re-experiencing it. Like, what else can people do to use manifestation to overcome their traumas?
Well, manifestation in essence, the type of manifestations that's happening in the way that we want, right? The kind that we hope for, that is literally you living in your soul story. That's what I call it. It is where you're not bound by the human constraints. And I mean, I don't know if anyone else follows science quite as much as I do, but I am always geeking out on what physics really says and the CIA.gov files that get released on transcendental meditation and astral traveling. When you remember what's real, in the sense of what's truly possible, all of that trauma becomes just one little chapter in the book. It's this human story that we can choose to step. I used to write this on my mirror every day because I was trying to figure out how to live in my, what I call my higher self, my soul story. And I'd write it on my lipstick on my mirror. And it would be, what are you going to choose today, Mandy? Human story or soul story? And my human story was painful and debilitating and difficult and hard to revisit. And it had all of these little constraints. This is why you can't do it. This is why it would never happen. It was just not a great place to be for a long time. But my soul was pure potential. It was what really mattered. And it wasn't that I was avoiding my human story, but by me living in pure potential, in my heart space, in my soul story, the human story got so far away that it might as well have been a dream or another lifetime. I can truly say there's very little, I don't think there's anything that I could, in this moment at least, anything that I could talk about from my past that would cause me pain. It would just be a story because it's so far vibrationally away from my reality now. And I think that sometimes instead of us trying to pour our consciousness into the human story to fix it, which basically talk about manifestation, then we're further creating it because our consciousness is so incredible. But if instead we pour our consciousness and our creation energy into all of the beauty, well, the rest starts to just naturally drift away because it doesn't exist anymore. So we're not living there anymore, you know?
Yeah, it makes so much sense. You have such a common sense approach, and I no, I really, and everything that you say, it's just it just feels like the truth. And so I really appreciate your wisdom that you have been imbued with, and sharing that. You just have a beautiful spirit, and I want to just let our readers, our listeners, our watchers, our manifestors know where they can find out more about you. We talked about your website, mandymorris.love. You have your book coming out. Can you tell us just a little bit about what our listeners would get out of reading your book?
Yeah, so it's the 8 secrets to powerful manifesting. It's such a tongue twister every time. Everyone's like, what is it? So just the 8 secrets for now. If you Google it, you'll find it under my name. But it's a really comprehensive but digestible approach to all of what I feel like were all the missing pieces to manifestation and why it's not working for people. And now that it's been released for a few weeks and I'm getting feedback, it's doing all that and more. So it's just so incredible. So if manifestation hasn't worked for you in the past, or if you're like, I don't know if it's for me, or it's super woo woo, then it's the perfect book for you.
That's beautiful. And they can get that on Amazon and anywhere else.
Yeah.
They can get it
Anywhere
on
you
your.
can get your reads.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mandy, for being on the Power of Your Mind podcast today. It's really been fun and enlightening to really get to know you more, and to hear about all these great tools and techniques. And you're just an inspiration. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.